Thunder cracks across the Portuguese hillside like something tearing open, not just the sky, but the very fabric of this place. Wind howls down the valley, carrying with it the metallic scent of wet stone, ancient soil, and something else, something almost like candle smoke. Not fresh, like it's been burning underground for decades. Quinta Holloway rises out of the storm like a ghost ship caught in a flash tide. Its sharp peaks and dark stone frame make it seem out of time, like a castle misplaced by history. This was supposed to be just a research trip. I was invited to digitize the Holloway family archives. Requested, actually, which is odd because I don't remember saying yes. But I'm here. The driver dropped me at the estate gate an hour before dusk and vanished down the gravel road before I could even say thank you. So I walked the half-mile drive alone, soaked, boots squelching, until the front door creaked open without anyone touching it. That should have been my first clue. Inside, the place was empty, grand, gilded, draped in velvet and shadow, like a theater after the curtain drops. I called out. Nothing. No echo. Just the slow tick of a grandfather clock in a hallway I couldn't find again after leaving it. Here's the thing. The Holloway family isn't just rich. They're old money, generational, aristocratic, and religious to a level that would make the Vatican uncomfortable. The family tree I'd been hired to organize stretched back to 1542. The current generation, though, not so visible. And that's when I noticed something strange. A full dining table was set, 12 places. Silver, bone-white porcelain, a centerpiece of dried roses, dustless, warm, like they just stepped out mid-dinner. I touched a spoon. It was hot. I walked deeper into the house, calling names I'd pulled from the genealogy record. Clarence? Sebastian? Madame Eloise? But the only reply was thunder and the soft clink of a wine glass somewhere to my left. Yeah, just a breeze. Probably. The documents were in the study where I'd planned to start. Shelves 6 meters tall, smelled like dry paper and frankincense. There was even a fire going. What kind of abandoned mansion keeps a fire going? Then I saw the family portraits. Oil paintings that looked more like photographs. Staring at me. Smirking. One of them, I swear, was painted of a man who looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same weird crooked tooth on the left. I told myself it was coincidence, like when you think you see your own face in a cloud. It happens, right? On the desk was the client brief, crisp paper warm to the touch. Open quote, "You are to begin immediately. Focus on the Holloway line post-World War II, especially Lord Sebastian. The documents you need are sealed in the East Wing archive. Do not go beyond the red door. No photographs, no mirrors, no recordings after sundown." Close quote. Funny joke, I thought. But then I checked my phone. No signal, battery drained to zero, a storm outside, a silent house, and a boy and heir missing for 22 years. The file said Sebastian was last seen in 2003, a 17-year-old prodigy with the future of the estate and centuries of legacy riding on his shoulders. He'd been sent on a religious retreat that spring. His private plane never arrived in Rome, but no official missing persons report was ever filed, no investigation, no public statement. The Holloways just carried on. But that's the thing. No one has seen them since then. Not together, not even separately. Yet the house is alive. Not haunted. No, that'd be too cliche. More like occupied. Kept. The wine bottles are rotated. The clocks all agree. There's fresh linen in the bedrooms. Someone lives here. Or pretends to. And if you're thinking I should have left, you're right. I probably should have. But curiosity is a disease. And I've got it bad. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And I'd love to know where you're listening from. Time and location down in the comments below. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I tried. I found a guest bedroom with heavy curtains and a 4-poster bed, the mattress far too firm and smelling faintly of cedar and something older, like a locked church. But sleep doesn't come easy when a house breathes. It was subtle at first, just the occasional creak in the floorboards above me, even though no one else was supposed to be here. Then came the shuffling. Not footsteps. Not exactly. like someone in socks pacing in slow circles just on the other side of the wall. I told myself it was the wind, that maybe old houses really do make noises. That logic held up right until 3:17 a.m. when the room across from mine clicked open and closed by itself. There was no one there. I checked. In the morning, though time feels different in this place, I decided to begin my work as planned. I went back to the main study where the client note had instructed me to focus on Lord Sebastian Holloway. The Holloways had 3 children that generation, only one male heir, Sebastian, born in 1986, baptized at the family chapel, educated in Rome and Vienna, had a reputation for brilliance and stubbornness in equal measure. That's usually the combo that gets you either knighted or disappeared. He was set to inherit the family fortune, an estimate of $500 million in property, antiques, offshore accounts, and something else cryptically listed in the ledger as guardianship of relics. There's no mention of what those relics are, or who they were being guarded from. Then I found the letter, dated April 9th, 2003, handwritten in a trembling hand, from Sebastian to someone named Uncle Hadrian. Open quote, "I've agreed to the pilgrimage, but I refuse to complete the rite. They can't force me. Not anymore. I know what the chapel really is. I know what's buried beneath it. If they think they can erase me like they did to Mother, they're wrong." 2 things jumped out at me. 1, the Holloways always said Sebastian vanished en route to his pilgrimage. This letter, it's clearly after he agreed to go, which means he was still here when he wrote it. 2, what did he mean by erase me like they did to Mother? His mother, Elizabetta Holloway, supposedly died of a heart condition in 1996, but I couldn't find her death certificate anywhere. In fact, the local registrar's archive was missing the entire month of June 1996, like it was never scanned in. And here's where it gets stranger. I found Sebastian's passport, slipped between 2 genealogy books in the West Library. No dust on it, like it had been placed there recently. I opened it. The last stamp was from Portugal, not Rome, April 10th, 2003, one day after the letter, stamped in Fatima. For those who don't know, Fatima is a pilgrimage site famous for Marian apparitions, religious miracles, visions of the Virgin Mary to 3 shepherd children in 1917. It's a place steeped in belief, but also secrecy. The Vatican still hasn't released the full 3rd secret of Fatima, and the Holloways were obsessed with it. Sebastian was supposedly going there to fast and pray before his formal ascension to family leadership. But there's no record of his arrival. No hotel check-ins, no photos, no tour logs, nothing. Almost like he never left the estate at all. That's when I started looking for the chapel. The Holloway family estate is enormous. Vineyards, olive groves, and at least 3 outbuildings I haven't entered yet. But somewhere on this land is a private chapel, and that's where the trail leads. I found a rough sketch in the back of an old Latin prayer book. Just a small drawing, stone building, circular window, and inscription carved above the door, Via Tasebis. You will be silent. Sounds like a warm and welcoming place, doesn't it? Then I heard it again, that soft sound like slippers dragging against old wood. But this time it wasn't upstairs, it was outside, just beneath my window. I peeked through the curtain. There was someone standing in the vineyard rows, still, pale, wearing a white garment. Looking directly at my window, I blinked. They were gone. I ran outside. Rain had started again. My boots sank into the soil between vines. No footprints, no movement, nothing but the creaking of branches in the wind. But you know what I did find? A rosary. Old wooden, with beads the size of marbles. The cross was carved with initials S.H. Sebastian Holloway's rosary. Someone had placed it on the 3rd vine from the north gate. Deliberate. Waiting. So now I'm asking the same question you are. If Sebastian disappeared over 20 years ago, who left it for me last night? Now, before we go further, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And tell me, what time is it where you are? What city are you listening from tonight? Now, turn off the lights. Maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's keep going. You ever walk into a room and feel like you're interrupting something? Like you've just missed someone by seconds, but there's no sign they were ever really there? That's how it feels in this place. Every single room. This morning, if we can call it that, because the sun hasn't broken through the fog for 2 days, I tried to track down the East Wing archive. The client instructions said it held the Holloway documents I'd need to continue, but none of the doors in that wing open, except one. A small sitting room with lace curtains, a stone fireplace, and a tea service that's still warm. I touched the teacup. Barely a shimmer of steam, but undeniably warm. Someone had poured it minutes ago, but there's no one here, at least not seen. That's when I noticed the calendar on the wall. April 2003. Every day circled in red. Except one, April 11th. That day was crossed out completely, inked over in a harsh black X. Sebastian's last known date. Coincidence? Right, sure. Let's call it that for now. I went back to the main hallway and decided to test something. I opened the linen cupboard under the stairs. Still smells of lavender and starch, but tucked behind the towels was a stack of magazines. All pristine. Not a wrinkle or tear among them. Top one? Time Europe, April 2003. The cover story, The Age of Enlightened Wealth, Europe's Young Heirs. And there he was, Sebastian Holloway, center of the cover, smiling, holding a chalice in one hand, wearing the same suit I found earlier hanging in the wardrobe upstairs. The article was short, almost empty. It said Sebastian had withdrawn from public view to pursue religious study, and the family declined interviews. It named him as the future of the Holloway estate. The next generation of faith, legacy, and, this was the weird part, custodianship of the relic. Singular this time. Even Time magazine couldn't figure out what that meant. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. I flipped through the magazine and all the advertisements were wrong. Phones from 2003, yes, but none I recognized. Logos I didn't know, a brand of car called Lachesis, a soda ad with Latin copy, and the people in the ads, all staring straight at me, like portraits. I set the magazine down. I haven't touched it since. Back in the hall, I noticed something even weirder. The grandfather clock. Same one I'd heard ticking on my first night. Tall, brass, still gleaming like it had been polished that morning. Except it wasn't ticking anymore. I opened the glass face and inside was a piece of folded paper. Another letter. No envelope, just my name. Typed. Not printed. Typed on aged yellow parchment, open quote, he didn't refuse the right, he just didn't finish it. You'll do better. Close quote, no signature. I wish I could explain the chill that ran through me reading that. It was like the temperature dropped instantly, only around me, like something stepped through me and kept walking. The hallway behind me felt longer than it had before, like the geometry had shifted. I started walking back toward the main study, but the portraits had changed. I'm not kidding. They were the same people, sure, same frames, same lighting. But the expressions had shifted, some subtly, some dramatically. The one of Lady Eloise previously smirking was now frowning. A hand that rested on a Bible now pointed down toward the edge of the frame. I followed it. Below the frame's edge, scratched into the wood, were tiny letters, Vires et Silentium, strength and silence. It wasn't just a family motto. It was carved into the base of every statue in the house, even the fire screen in the lounge, and the sign I found hanging, barely visible, inside the broken greenhouse at the back of the estate. This house doesn't forget. It doesn't rot. It doesn't break. It doesn't age. I checked the food pantry, flour, oats, rice, perfectly preserved, like a time capsule, but none of it has expiration dates. None of it looks modern, not even the labels. Some of it's in Latin, some in a language I couldn't place, characters almost like Hebrew but not. And the dates, always from before 2003. Always. Which leads me to a horrible theory I haven't said aloud yet. This place is stuck, not haunted, not cursed, just preserved, concealed in amber. Or maybe it's not the house that hasn't aged. Maybe it's just me that's moving forward and the house is waiting for someone to catch up. Someone like Sebastian. Or me. And I know what you're thinking. Why haven't I left? I've tried. Twice. Once on foot. I followed the drive back toward the road, exactly the way the driver came in. Walked 20 minutes. No gates, just more vineyard, then more olive trees. Then somehow I was back at the fountain near the front door. The second time I took one of the old bikes I found in the carriage house. Rode fast. No turns, no detours. I ended up at the same spot again. The house doesn't want me to leave, or maybe I don't want to yet. I don't know. I just know this. Whatever happened to Sebastian, the house is still waiting for someone to finish what he started. And right now it seems like that someone is me. I met him by accident. It was late afternoon, though that doesn't mean much here. The light never changes. The sky stays overcast like a paused frame in a black and white movie. I was trying to locate the East Wing archive again, this time checking for a rear entrance, when I heard something scrape against the stones in the courtyard. A broom. Just outside the ivy-covered conservatory, a man was sweeping fallen leaves in slow, methodical strokes. He wore a beige sweater too thick for the season, dark trousers tucked into boots, and gloves. His skin was pale, almost translucent like old candle wax, and he looked right at me. I startled and muttered something dumb like, "Oh, I didn't realize anyone else was here." He didn't answer right away. He just nodded once, then went back to sweeping. I asked his name. He said, "The family calls me Keeper." Not my name is. Just, "The family calls me Keeper." I asked if he'd worked here long, since before you were born. Now, I'm 34. That puts his employment somewhere around the early 90s, maybe longer. I asked him if he'd known Sebastian. He paused just for a second and said, "Everyone knew him, but not everyone understood him." I waited. Lord Sebastian wasn't like the others, he went on. He asked too many questions, spent too much time in the West Library. He read the letters. "What letters?" I asked. He looked up sharply. "You shouldn't ask." He turned, broom dragging a dark streak across the stone. I called after him, asked who else was living here, why the house was always ready, why the clock still worked. But he was gone, just vanished, like smoke. I checked the courtyard, the hedges, even inside the greenhouse. Nothing. No footprints in the soil, just the faint trace of broom bristles in a half-finished figure-8 pattern on the courtyard stones. And then I noticed the garden gate. A small wooden door I'd overlooked, nearly hidden behind hanging vines. The latch was old iron and looked rusted shut, but when I touched it, it opened effortlessly. Beyond it, a narrow cobblestone path, winding downward. At the bottom of the hill was a utility cottage, one window partially shattered. I approached cautiously. The door was locked, but the window was just wide enough to slip a hand through. Inside, a single cot, a wooden chair, and a small writing desk with a kerosene lamp. And on the desk, photographs. Dozens of them, all of the same boy, all of Sebastian, from infancy to late teens. Some posed most candid. In one, he's standing in the vineyard at dusk, a book in one hand, the same rosary I found in the other. In another, he's with a woman, probably Elisabetta, his mother, near a stone well, both laughing. Then there's a final one, Sebastian standing in front of a chapel door, arms by his side, looking straight at the camera. He doesn't smile. The date on the photo reads April 11th, 2003, the day he vanished. I tried to take a photo of the image with my phone. The screen glitched, just static and green lines. When I looked up, the man Keeper was standing just outside the cottage. I nearly fell backwards. He said nothing, just shook his head slowly. "You've seen too much," he murmured. "The estate won't let you leave now." I asked who he really was. He smiled, sad and patient. I was the last one who tried to help him. He turned and walked into the trees. I watched him for as long as I could, but eventually he was gone. That night, I tried to find a record of him. Anyone named Keeper. No staff files, no hiring records, no background checks. I did a reverse image search on the photo of Sebastian from the magazine. No matches. Not even in the archives where I first found it. The file had been replaced with a blank page. And then came the scratching, soft, deliberate, from inside the walls, from inside the room. I turned and saw the mirror above the fireplace fog over, like breath had touched it from the other side. 4 words etched themselves across the surface. Finish what he began. The glass cleared. My reflection returned, but I was wearing Sebastian's clothes. I blinked and it was gone. Here's the part I haven't told you yet. I checked the guest registry on my first day. I thought it would list historians, archivists, anyone who had worked here before, but there was only one name recorded in the last 20 years. Mine, written in ink, in the same handwriting as the letter that said, "You'll do better." So before we move forward, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And tell me, what time is it where you are? What city are you watching from? I want to know who's out there with me. The Holloways were never normal, not in the way other aristocratic families were eccentric or religious or stubborn. No, this was something more structural, like their bloodline had rules no one else had to follow. That became clear when I found the right book. It wasn't even hidden, just left on the side table in the formal drawing room under a silver tray with 2 untouched sugar cubes, like someone expected me to find it. It looked like a hymnal, small, leather-bound, hand-stitched edges. Inside, page after page of Latin prayers, sketches, and ritual diagrams. At first glance, it resembled something between a personal Bible and an exorcist's manual, but in the back, stapled into the end paper like an afterthought, was a typed card. Open quote, initiation sequence, Holloway male heirs only, must be completed prior to 18th birthday. Non-compliance voids inheritance. Non-completion equals disavowal. Rite must take place within sacred ground. Close quote, no signature, no legal header, just a typed warning. And beneath it, one chilling line handwritten in ink, open quote, those who do not burn must remain. Close quote. That phrase haunted me the rest of the day. So I did what I do best. I went digging. The Manor Library, specifically the West Wing, is endless. You think you've reached the last shelf, but behind it, another row and another. Spiral staircases, hidden ladders. It's like a Borges story, a library that never ends. I found an unmarked folder behind a row of hollow encyclopedias. Inside were notes from the family's in-house theologian, circa 1949. His handwriting was tight, obsessive, words repeated like he was trying to convince himself. He wrote, open quote, each Holloway male must pass through fire, not symbolic, not poetic, literal flame, watched, judged. Those who resist become something else. It is not death, it is holding. If delayed inheritance, trapped devotion, Sebastian refused. He stood in the chapel and said, no, close quote. Not long after that, he vanished. But here's the kicker. Elisabetta, the mother, had written her own entry in the margins. Open quote. He didn't resist the right. He passed it. But the fire did not burn him. That's why they're afraid. Close quote. And I have no idea what that means. How do you pass a fire that doesn't burn you? What were they expecting the fire to do? The next part of the rite involved submersion, not in water, not wine, oil, blessed oil, lit with flame in a marble basin shaped like a coffin. The initiate would enter, naked, chanting a Latin psalm, and emerge changed. But no one ever recorded what changed meant. The notes just trail off like everyone involved agreed to forget, or were made to. In the hallway outside the West Library, there's a painting I hadn't noticed before. It's of the old chapel. Not the estate version I've seen sketched, but an earlier one. Smaller, with a stone plinth in front, smoke rising from its center. And standing around it are 9 Holloway men. In the center, a boy, maybe 17, and behind him, arms on his shoulders, is someone in robes wearing a porcelain mask. When I looked closer, I realized the mask had no eye holes, just smooth white ceramic. That same night, I went back to the guest room. My bag was open. I hadn't left it that way. My clothes were untouched, but tucked on top was a folded piece of paper, burnt at the edges. It read, open quote, your time draws near, we will watch, you must not resist the fire, close quote. And it was signed, Sebastian Holloway. I didn't sleep. Again. But that's not even the strangest part. The fireplace in the bedroom, it lit itself at 3:33 a.m. I hadn't touched it. No lighter, no matches. It just ignited. Flames, orange and blue, licking the inside of the hearth. And in the flickering light, I swear, I saw something in the mirror above the mantel. Not a figure, not quite, just a silhouette. It moved when I didn't. It stood behind me, close. Then it vanished. I threw a blanket over the mirror and haven't uncovered it since. This morning the chapel bell rang. No wind, no reason, just one deep, resonant chime. I followed the sound out through the olive grove, and there it was. The old stone chapel, exactly like in the painting. The one with the smoke and the plinth and the masked figure, but there was no door, only an archway. Inside, darkness, heavy, thick, like it had weight. I stepped forward, and I swear to you, I heard my name whispered from inside. Twice. I haven't entered it yet, but I think I'll have to, because this place isn't just preserving history, it's rehearsing it, and I'm next in line. I found the basement by accident. Well, maybe not accident. Maybe the house wanted me to. It happened just after I tried to sleep again. Don't laugh. I know I should have stopped trying by now. The wind was howling through the shutters like it was circling prey, and there was this strange pulsing light that kept flickering under the floorboards. Not moonlight, not firelight, something electric. So I got up, pushed the rug aside in the west hall. Don't ask me why, I just felt like I should, and found a thin metal ring set into the wood. I pulled. It groaned like a coffin lid. Beneath it, a narrow staircase spiraling down into what smelled like ozone and mold. I took a flashlight. The stairs led into a room I can only describe as an old surveillance hub, straight out of a Cold War bunker, rows of monitors, reel-to-reel tape decks, shelves of VHS and Betamax labeled with years, 1996, 1997, 1998, 2003. The screens weren't on, but the machines still hummed softly. Someone had recently been here. Dust covered most of the shelves, but the desk had a clean ring where a mug once sat. There were old rotary switches to toggle between feeds. A stack of notebooks nearby cataloging timestamps and locations. Library West Corner, 1202, Greenhouse Outer Lens, 3 a.m., Chapel Hall Interior, 433, entries stretching back decades. But the strangest part, most of the notes were focused on one person, Sebastian. Dozens of entries logged his movements, what he read, where he prayed, what he burned. I scanned the tapes until I found one labeled, Sebastian, Final Chapel Entry, 11th April 2003. I loaded it, pressed play. The feed was grainy black and white, night vision. A fixed camera pointed toward the chapel door, the old one, the one with no handle. At 3:16 a.m., Sebastian appears on screen, dressed in ceremonial white, barefoot, holding the rosary. He pauses at the threshold, mouths something, can't hear it, there's no audio. He walks forward, disappears inside. 10 seconds later, the door slams shut behind him. And that's it. He never comes back out. The tape runs another hour. The chapel remains still. Then the screen cuts to static. I tried ejecting the tape, but it was stuck. The machine began to smoke slightly, just at the edges. I unplugged it, sat there breathing hard. Then I noticed something even more disturbing. There was another tape in the machine next to it, not labeled like the others, just a piece of masking tape with my name handwritten in red ink. My full name. I haven't told anyone I'm here. I never even gave my real name when I booked this trip, just initials. But the tape said it. First, middle, last. I shouldn't have played it. Of course I did. At first, just static. Then flickers, a hallway. This hallway, my room, the courtyard, all of them filmed from odd angles as if from inside the walls. Then I saw myself in bed, reading, typing, being watched, and then there was a shadow behind me. Each clip, there it was. Sometimes in the mirror, sometimes in the doorway, sometimes just barely behind me like a coat rack that had grown too tall. I fast-forwarded, panicked. My hands were shaking. One final scene. Me, standing in front of the chapel door, same white garment, same rosary, looking straight at the camera, only it wasn't me now. It was me. Older. Hair a little different, skin worn, but it was me. The tape ended, the machine turned itself off. I stood there in silence, the only light coming from the little blinking green diode on the deck. I should have left. I meant to leave. But when I turned around, the stairwell door had shut. No latch. No handle on this side. I spent 30 minutes trying to wedge it open. Then, click, it opened on its own. Back upstairs, the air felt wrong, heavier, charged, like the walls were vibrating ever so slightly. I looked down at my clothes. My sleeves were soaked in something that wasn't water. Oil. From where? I still don't know. That night, I checked the guest room again. My mirror, still covered with the blanket, had something written across it in chalky white. "We see you now." I wiped it clean. The cloth came away warm. So before we move forward, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And let me know what time is it and where are you listening from tonight. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's keep going. There's something uniquely dreadful about old family portraits. The way their eyes follow you, the stiffness in their posture, as if they knew their images would last longer than they ever could. But this was beyond that. I found the portrait room on the east side of the estate, behind a locked wooden panel disguised as part of the bookshelf in the study. It clicked open after I accidentally leaned too hard against the spine of a dusty copy of Demons of the Faith. You can't make this stuff up. A short hallway, velvet-lined and oddly warm, led to a chamber so silent that my own footsteps sounded like intrusions. The room was circular, walls lined from floor to ceiling with grand oil portraits. The Montvert family. Plaques beneath each frame told me everything. Lucien Montvert, 1883 to 1945, Séraphine Montvert, 1887 to 1945, 1908 to 1972. It went on like that. Parents, sons, daughters, each generation stacked like chapters of a long, cursed book. And at the very center of the room, lit by a gentle hanging lantern, a giant portrait taller than me, framed in dark red wood. Sebastian Montvert. His eyes were green. I hadn't known that before. The painter had captured something in his expression. Not warmth, not exactly sadness either. It looked like resignation, like he knew something was coming. But here's the thing. There were more portraits than there should have been. A whole other row of them, smaller, newer, lined a gallery I hadn't noticed at first. No plaques, just faces. Children, mostly. Teenagers. Some of them in school uniforms, one in a nurse's uniform. And then I saw her, the missing tourist girl, the one from the photo pinned to the station wall. She looked maybe 17 in the portrait. Pale blue eyes, dark curls, same face. Then the man from the newspaper, the one who vanished in 2009 during his retreat. Right there. Their portraits were here. Each one hung in silence, and the brushwork was recent. At that point, I started backing away. I made it 2 steps before I heard a sound I hadn't heard in days. Scratching. Not loud, but persistent. It came from behind one of the frames. I stepped closer. There was a faint rustling sound, like fabric shifting. I reached out, my hand was trembling. Touched the frame. Cold. Then a sharp knock from behind the painting, like a single, urgent message. I jumped back, knocking into the lantern. It swayed, shadows dancing across the room. When I turned around again, the frame I'd touched was now tilted slightly, and the eyes in the portraits, I swear they were all looking at me. All of them. I left, ran through the hallway, retraced my steps to the study. Slammed the hidden door shut. But the whispering followed. I know how that sounds, but it's true. Soft words in a language I didn't know, carried by the vents, whispering through the walls. When I got back to my room, something had changed again. My bag, open. My notebooks rifled through, and on the mirror, once more cleaned, someone had scrawled a name across the surface with oil-smudged fingers. Thaddeus. And beneath it, he's still watching. I looked outside. No one. But the hallway lights flickered again. Once, twice, then steady. I didn't sleep. Instead, I started reading the journals I'd found earlier. Sebastian's. Most of them were theological debates, musings on purity, sacrifice, and returning to the sacred voice. But one passage stuck out. Open quote, "When the portraits begin to change, we are no longer alone. They mark the chosen and watch the corridor of time. My face was the first, others will follow. And when the gallery fills, the house will no longer need doors." Another chill ran through me. What did that mean? No longer need doors? Were these people being taken or absorbed somehow? Preserved like insects in amber, framed for eternity in oils and varnish? I knew what I had to do next, go back to the chapel. But first, I had to find Thaddeus. If he was still watching, maybe he left something behind. I just hoped he wasn't still here. You know what's funny? I came here looking for one person, Sebastian Montvert, but now it's Thaddeus I can't stop thinking about, the one whose name was smeared across the mirror last night like a greasy warning. That name, it didn't just show up once. When I woke this morning, it was etched again into the condensation on my window. Thaddeus. Backwards, as if written from the outside in. I tried to act normal, ate stale biscuits from my pack, brushed my teeth with bottled water, kept the curtains open, but the house still pressed in around me. So I did what any doomed idiot in a sleep story would do. I went looking for Thaddeus. The east wing was colder than I remembered. I hadn't explored that side of the estate much. Too many creaking floorboards and drafty corridors that smelled like mildew and long-forgotten arguments. But I found something. Behind a broken wardrobe, just a crumbling shell with one remaining door, I found a staircase. It led down, not into a cellar exactly, more like a personal chamber. It felt different from the rest of the house, warmer, lived in. There were 3 rooms in total, a narrow kitchen with rusted pots, a small bedroom with a single iron bed, and finally, a study. No portraits here, no candles, no whispers, just books. Hundreds of them, stacked on every available surface, not organized, not even shelved. Just chaos. And in the center of the chaos, a leather-bound journal, resting on a velvet cushion like it was sacred. I knew it was his, the initials TM, embossed in gold. The handwriting matched the loose pages I'd seen in the estate's library. I opened it. The first few entries were boring. Rain reports, food shortages, complaints about mice. Then something shifted. Open quote, April 13th, 1968. They've started again, the dreams. The chapel pulses with light even when it's empty. I asked Father, but he only smiled. He said I should be grateful to be chosen, but I don't feel chosen. I feel sick. Close quote. Open quote, May 1st, 1968. I watched them take Marguerite. They said she volunteered, but she cried the whole time, and now her portrait is in the red room. Her eyes won't stop bleeding in my dreams. Close quote. Open quote, May 18th, 1968. I found the old blueprints. The chapel has a second level, hidden above the rafters. That's where the light comes from. I think it's a machine, but no one believes me. Close quote. Open quote, June 5th, 1968. I'm leaving this diary behind. If you're reading this, you need to get out. The house marks you. The longer you stay, the more you become part of it. Your name starts echoing in the walls, and the portraits, God help you if they start smiling. Close quote. That was the last full entry. The next few pages were torn out violently. The stubs of ripped paper poked up like little teeth. But there was one more note scrawled across the inside of the back cover in childlike handwriting. Open quote. The gallery is never full, but when it is, they'll wake up. Close quote. What does that even mean? Who's they? And more importantly, who wasn't in that gallery yet? I stayed there for hours, flipping through his notes. Lists of names, dates. Some crossed out, some circled. Marguerite, Francis, Elena, Benoit, Althea, and at the bottom, Sebastian, final attempt. Fail, fail, what attempt? I checked the clock, nearly 5:30 p.m. The air had gotten thick, heavy, the kind of air that warns you of a coming storm. So I packed the journal, tucked it under my coat, and made my way back upstairs. As I entered the main hallway, a new sound greeted me. Faint music, not modern music, organ music, coming from the chapel. I should have run. Honestly, I almost did. But curiosity is a cruel little god, and it drags you by the collar until your feet forget how to turn around. So I followed it. The doors of the chapel were slightly ajar. A flickering light, candlelight or something like it, glowed from inside. And there, seated at the grand pipe organ, was a figure, thin, gray hair, robed, playing the hymn I'd heard in my dream. Slowly, reverently. And then they turned. It wasn't Sebastian. It wasn't a ghost. It was a woman. Ancient, with eyes the color of milk. She looked right at me and said, "You're early." I didn't respond. She gestured to the pew. "They're almost ready, you know. The portraits. We've just one space left." Then she smiled. And behind her, I saw a wall I'd never noticed before, covered in small black and white photos. Not paintings, real photos. All recent. All missing. All with names beneath. and on the far right, an empty frame. The nameplate already engraved. It said, "Reserved for the chronicler." That's when I understood. They'd been waiting for me, and I had walked right into it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Also, let me know your local time and location in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from tonight. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's keep going. The air inside that chapel didn't move, not even the slightest draft, and yet my skin broke out in goosebumps so intense it felt like my entire body was bristling with antennae. Reserved for the chronicler. That was me, wasn't it? I backed away from the wall of photos, hoping somehow that if I walked quietly enough, I'd unwrite the moment. But that old woman with the milk-colored eyes just sat at the organ, one hand now resting on the keys, the other gently raised in farewell. "Don't let the house finish your story," she whispered as if offering mercy. I didn't respond. I just ran, through the chapel doors, down the hallway, into the library, up the stairs, through the north corridor, back to my room, slammed the door, locked it, bolted it, pushed a dresser in front of it like some last-ditch barricade in a zombie movie. Childish? Sure. Effective? No idea. I sat with my back to the dresser, holding Thaddeus's journal to my chest. My heart wouldn't slow, and then I heard it. Scratch, 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 not from the hallway, from inside the walls. At first, I thought it might be mice. Rational brain kicking in, but no. The pattern was too deliberate. 3 long scratches, then silence, then 2 shorter ones. Like someone knocking in code. I scrambled to grab my phone, but of course, still no signal. No bars, no Wi-Fi, just that mocking little SOS in the corner. So I did what any normal, rational, extremely on-edge person would do. I turned to the last pages of Thaddeus's journal again. There was one line I hadn't noticed before, written along the inside of the front cover, barely visible unless the light hit it just right. Open quote, "They'll find you in the walls first. That's how they listen." Close quote. Nice. Very comforting, Thaddeus. Thanks. I didn't sleep that night, not even close, but I did start noticing things. The painting over my bed, one of the few that hadn't changed, was different now. A single new figure had appeared in the background, barely visible, head turned as if mid-step. And the mirror? There was condensation on it again, but this time, no name, just a single word. Soon. By morning, I made a decision. I was leaving. The estate, the family, the story. I'd document what I had, but I wasn't going to end up a photo on that chapel wall. I packed my things, journal, phone, flashlight, the house key, even a bottle of holy water from my glove compartment. You'd be amazed how many of these disappearances eventually tie back to cult stuff. Call me paranoid. I loaded up the car. I even turned the key in the ignition, but the engine wouldn't start. Dead battery? Maybe. Or maybe the house had other plans. So I got out, deciding to walk, just to the main road, a few miles. No big deal. And that's when I saw it, standing just past the hedgerow in the tree line. Sebastian. Clear as day. Same coat, same cane, same calm expression. He didn't wave, he didn't move, he just stared at me. I froze. Every rational part of my brain tried to conjure up an explanation. Some reclusive cousin, a mistaken identity, a ghostly hallucination caused by sleeplessness and stale cookies. But then he smiled. And it wasn't human, it was too slow, too wide, like he was trying on a gesture he hadn't used in decades. And in that instant, I understood. He wasn't trying to keep me away, he was trying to bring me here. This had never been about a missing heir or a noble family scandal. This was about me. I turned and ran. Again. Back through the gardens, past the greenhouse, toward the hidden staircase in the east wing, down into the chamber where I'd found Thaddeus's room. I needed more, answers, evidence, anything. But when I opened the study door, the journal was gone. All the books, gone. The walls were black, not painted, burned. Only a single object remained in the center of the floor. A new portrait, not yet painted, just an empty canvas, still wet, and beneath it a brass plaque already mounted. The chronicler, accepted August 6th, 2025. That's today. Today, I stepped back, the air grew thick, my ears rang, something shifted behind the walls like hundreds of bodies rearranging themselves just out of view. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Not heavy, not angry, measured, gentle, almost ceremonial, coming down the staircase behind me. I didn't wait to see who it was. I grabbed the plaque. Why? I don't know, maybe to prove I wasn't imagining things, and bolted back up into the hallway. The house was changing. Walls that had been solid now had doors. Doors that had been open were now gone. The corridor was longer, and in the distance, faint organ music again. The same melody, over and over. I thought about Thaddeus, about the blueprints he mentioned, a second level of the chapel. That's where the machine is. I don't even remember deciding to go. I just knew I had to. If this house was alive, if the chapel had some machine that was feeding it, waking it, growing it, I had to see it for myself. Maybe destroy it. Maybe join it. I know how that sounds. But this story has a gravitational pull, and I think I passed the event horizon days ago. So I'm going. To the chapel. To the machine. And I'm bringing the plaque with me. Let's see who really gets to finish this story. There's something disorienting about walking back into a room you thought you'd never enter again, especially when it no longer looks the same. The chapel had changed. No longer the small candlelit sanctuary I remembered. It had expanded. The ceiling seemed twice as high, the walls pulled further apart. A long central aisle ran down to the altar like a spine, and above it, just barely visible, was a narrow spiral staircase that hadn't been there before. The second level. I tightened my grip on the brass plaque. Its edges had started to warm in my palm, like it had absorbed the tension from my skin. Don't ask me why I kept holding it. At that point, it felt like my only proof I still existed. The chapel was empty. No old woman at the organ, no humming, just the sound of my shoes echoing with every step, and the occasional creak of wood like the building was breathing in anticipation. At the altar, I paused. Something shimmered beneath the candles. A trapdoor? No, just a polished silver plate embedded in the marble. Reflective, but not like a mirror. It didn't show me. It showed the chapel as it had been in the 1800s, rows full of parishioners dressed in black, their heads turned toward me. Watching, waiting. I backed away slowly and climbed the staircase. Each step was tight, like the tower had been built for people smaller than me. The spiral wound tighter and tighter until at last I reached a round platform suspended above the altar. And there it was, the machine. I don't know what I expected. Something mechanical, maybe gears, coils, levers. But what I saw was alive. A mass of intertwined roots and wires stretched across the ceiling, pulsating gently like a giant's nervous system. At the center, a glass orb suspended in brass, spinning slowly. Inside it, faint but visible, was a series of projected portraits, each one glowing like a film negative. Faces I recognized, members of the Roussel family, and not just the ones who had gone missing. Me, my face, right there among them, flickering between expressions, awake, asleep, screaming. I staggered backward, heart in my throat. The journal had mentioned a device, but this wasn't a device. This was a memory engine, feeding off presence, feeding off time. Thaddeus hadn't disappeared. He'd been recorded, just like the others. I moved closer. The machine's hum grew louder. Low, almost soothing, like it was inviting me to participate. A chorus of whispers echoed around the chamber, not in my ears, but in my bones. One must always remain to tell the story. I placed the plaque at the base of the orb. The moment I did, the machine reacted. Light pulsing faster, portraits rotating wildly. And then it stopped. All movement ceased. The orb turned black, and the portraits vanished. I held my breath, waiting, hoping I'd broken the cycle. But that's when the trapdoor below the altar, yes, there had been one, opened. A ladder descended from the second level down into darkness. Without thinking, I descended. What else could I do? I counted the rungs, 23. At the bottom, I found myself in a small square chamber. Stone walls, no windows, only one thing in the room. A desk, and seated behind it, Sebastian Roussel. Not a photograph, not a hallucination. The man himself. He looked up, calm, pleasant. "You're early," he said. I couldn't speak, not right away. You've completed the journey faster than most, he continued. That usually means one of two things, curiosity or destiny. Where am I? I finally choked out. He smiled. The root of the family tree. He gestured for me to sit. I didn't. You're not supposed to be here yet, he added, tapping the desk. But the house chose you. He slid a small wooden box toward me. I didn't touch it. Inside, he said, is your invitation, your portrait. A frame waits for you upstairs. I shook my head. I'm not staying. I just want to know what happened to them. The Roussells, the disappearances, all of it. Sebastian sighed. We didn't disappear. We were kept, preserved, like insects in amber. The house has always been hungry for memory, for legacy. It feeds on story. The machine simply makes the meal more efficient. I felt nauseous. You're telling me the house eats people? He tilted his head. No, it consumes only their presence, their permanence. No bodies, no graves, just a gentle forgetting. You're insane. He laughed softly. I've been called worse. I stared at the box. Something inside was ticking softly. Why me? I asked. Why bring me here? You were already looking, he said. We just gave you a reason to find us. The walls began to vibrate. I heard footsteps again, above this time. The chapel, the organ, the floorboards creaking. I ran. Again. This time I didn't stop at the chapel. I went straight for the front door of the manor. It opened. Just like that. The fog had lifted. The sun was rising. The road stretched ahead like it had never disappeared at all. I sprinted to the edge of the estate. Every step made my legs feel lighter, like the gravity of the place was letting go. I reached my car. The engine started. The battery? Miraculously fine. I didn't look back until I was 3 towns away, just long enough to check the rear view. And guess what? In the back seat, resting against my bag, was the box, unopened, still ticking, still waiting. I should have thrown the box out the window. I should have driven straight to the nearest police station, tossed it on the counter, and let some poor rookie deal with the whispering, ticking, too heavy for its size mystery wrapped in polished wood. But I didn't. Instead, I drove with it for 5 full hours. Every time I pulled into a gas station or stopped to breathe, it was still there. On the passenger seat, unmoved. Almost like it was buckled in. It didn't vibrate or rattle, but I swear I could feel it watching me. I finally made it home, my real home. Apartment 3C, second floor, with a leaky faucet and a neighbor who plays the saxophone badly at 2 a.m. I walked in and set the box on the kitchen counter next to the fruit bowl I never refilled, and then I stared at it for 3 hours. The ticking was louder now. Not menacing, just constant, like a metronome, like a countdown. I didn't open it that day. Instead, I dug out all the research I'd collected, every newspaper clipping, every photo, every half-baked theory about the Roussel family. I spread them out on the floor, red string style, like I was auditioning for a detective drama. But there were no answers, only more questions. Sebastian's words kept echoing. Open quote, "The house doesn't eat people, it consumes presence." Close quote. The phrase made more sense than I wanted to admit. I realized I couldn't remember what day I had entered the manor, or how long I'd actually been inside. And when I checked my phone, the photos I had taken? Gone. All of them. Even the ones from before. Family holidays, friends, every digital trace of me had vanished from the cloud. I was already disappearing. I opened the box. Inside wasn't what I expected. No cursed talisman, no hair from a goat, just a velvet-lined interior with 3 items. 1, a tiny brass key. 2, a photograph sepia-toned and faded of a man who looked exactly like me. 3, a note handwritten in looping cursive. Open quote, "If you forget yourself, follow the key." Close quote. I flipped the photo over. On the back it said, open quote, "Victor Roussel, 1907." Close quote. Now listen, I'm not a Roussel. I don't have aristocratic blood or a family estate or a creepy chapel in my backyard. But the resemblance was uncanny. Same sharp jaw, same browling, even the mole near the left eye. Either someone had edited this picture using AI-level skills, or I was looking at an ancestor I didn't know I had. A knock at the door made me jump. It was late, almost midnight. The saxophone guy had stopped playing. Another knock, harder this time. I looked through the peephole. No one. But as I turned back toward the kitchen, I saw it. A new frame had appeared on my wall. Where a dull painting of a lighthouse used to hang, there was now a wooden frame, thick, ornate, and gilded in gold leaf. Inside it, the portrait of me, not the sepia one. Modern, eyes wide, face pale, the same expression I must have had when I opened that box. I ran over and pulled the frame down, but the moment I turned my back, it was back on the wall. This time I wasn't alone in the photo. Behind me, barely visible in the background, was the organ, the chapel, the house. The box key burned in my hand. I dropped it. It clanged to the floor and rolled beneath the couch. When I bent down to reach it, the ticking stopped. Silence. I froze. Then, slowly, a new sound began, so faint it was almost part of the silence. Humming. A melody I hadn't heard since the chapel. Soft. Familiar. It was coming from the box. I backed away, heart hammering. The photo in the frame flickered. For a second, my eyes in the portrait blinked. Then the humming stopped, and the lights went out. All of them. I stood in the dark for what felt like years. Phone dead. No candles. No help. Only the box. Ticking again. Softly. I must have passed out or fallen asleep on the floor because when I woke up, it was morning. The box was gone. So was the frame. But something had changed. I checked my ID. My name had shifted. It still looked like my handwriting, still felt like me, but where my last name used to be, now it read Roussel. Even my birth certificate, tucked in the drawer with my passport, now listed the Roussel estate as my place of birth. I was being rewritten. That's when I made the decision. One last trip. Back to the estate. Back to whatever machine, memory engine, demon box, or ancestral curse had decided I belonged to it. Because if I didn't stop it now, there wouldn't be anything left of me to save. I packed light, flashlight, journal, water, one of those tiny motel Gideon Bibles, just in case, and the photo of Victor. And then I left. The fog returned the moment I passed the county line, and when the manor came into view, it was different again, newer, rebuilt, refined, as though it had always been there, waiting for me to come home. You'd think that returning to a place like that, knowing what it did, what it took, would feel like walking into a nightmare. But when I stepped out of the car and saw the Roussel estate again, there was an odd sense of welcome. Not comfort, not safety. Just familiarity. Like when you dream about a place you've never been, but somehow already know every creaking floorboard and drafty corridor. And this time, the house wasn't in ruin. No cracks in the stone, no ivy choking the facade, no weather-beaten shutters hanging loose like dead limbs. It looked pristine, restored to its early 1900s glory, but somehow modernized. The windows gleamed like tinted glass. The gravel path sparkled faintly beneath the tires of my rental car. It was as though time had reversed itself, or maybe time had bent to the house's will. I didn't knock. The front door opened before I even reached the steps. It didn't creak. It didn't groan. It swung open silently as though it had been expecting me all along. Inside, the foyer was warm, lit, grand. A chandelier swayed gently above the entrance hall, and the floor beneath me wasn't dust or stone but polished black marble. The family crest glistened inlaid at the center, a lion devouring its own tail. In a hallway off to the left, a phonograph played soft jazz, something from the 1930s. It gave the house a heartbeat. No sign of Sebastian. No echoing cries, no whispering walls, but then on the staircase, a girl. Maybe 8 or 9 years old, pale, freckles, barefoot. She held a small stuffed rabbit and watched me from halfway up the stairs. "Victor?" she asked. My mouth dried. "No," I said, voice cracked. "That's not my name." She just smiled. Not a creepy horror movie smile, more like someone recognizing an old friend. Or a brother. "You came back. That's good. We're almost ready." "Ready for what?" She didn't answer, just turned and walked upstairs, disappearing around the landing. Every instinct I had screamed to leave, to burn the place down. But I followed her. The second floor had changed too. Where once there were dust-choked rooms and rotted wood, there were now gallery walls lined with family portraits. Dozens of them. Oil paintings and photographs, all framed in gold, all eerily lifelike. Some had names etched into the frames. Others didn't. And in the middle of them, just past a velvet rope I didn't remember seeing before, was my own face, larger than the others, painted, not photographed, wearing a black three-piece suit and a distant expression. Standing next to me in the portrait was the little girl from the stairs. I checked for a nameplate. It said, open quote, Victor Roussel III, 1897. The lost son returned. Close quote. I backed away. Then the lights dimmed, slowly, deliberately. The phonograph downstairs started playing again, but now the song had changed. No longer jazz. This one was older, a funeral dirge. Low, organ-heavy. The floor beneath me pulsed. The hallway lengthened, not figuratively, literally. Every step I took seemed to stretch the corridor farther away from the staircase. I spun to go back, but the landing was gone, replaced by more hallway. And then I saw them. The others, figures frozen mid-step in the hall. Dressed in clothing from different decades, 1920s flapper dresses, 1950s military uniforms, a woman in a 1970s nightgown, a boy in 1990s sneakers, all of them motionless, all of them staring straight ahead. I recognized one of them, the nurse from the photograph. Marie, she blinked, not a frozen statue, alive, trapped. Help us, she whispered. Please. I tried to speak, but the hallway tilted, just slightly. Like the house was adjusting itself. The air grew thick with something, not smoke, not fog, memory. The scent of candle wax and gardenia and blood oranges. Then, from behind me, footsteps. Heavy ones, booted, deliberate. Victor, a voice crooned. Not Sebastian, lower, older. You're late. I turned, heart slamming against my ribs. A tall man in a formal coat stood at the end of the hall. His face was in shadow, but I could make out the crest pin on his lapel, the same one I found in the chapel. You are Victor, he said again, stepping forward. And now the house is nearly whole. He raised a hand, and the paintings on the walls shifted. Their faces moved, smiling, blinking, watching. Dozens of Roussel peering down at me. My hands itched. The key. I had stuffed it in my coat pocket before coming. I pulled it out, gripped it tight, and looked down. There, right at my feet, was a trapdoor. Not there a moment ago. Same brass outline as the key. I jammed the key in before I could think too long. It turned easily. The hallway groaned, the ceiling buckled, and the trapdoor opened. Down below, blackness. But not just black, movement. A churning fog, whispering voices, a pulse like a giant heartbeat. I didn't want to go down, but I also didn't want to become a frame on the wall. I jumped. The fall was short. I landed not on earth or stone, but wood, floorboards. I was back in the chapel. Same organ, same altar, same silence. Only this time it was clean, candles lit, and the pews weren't empty. Every row filled with people I'd seen in portraits. Watching. Silent. At the front, standing beside the organ, was Sebastian. Only he wasn't a teenager anymore. He was older, mid-30s, impossibly elegant, eyes like mirrors. You made it, he said. What is this? He gestured to the crowd. Your family, your legacy. This isn't mine. It is now. The chapel doors closed behind me. The organ began to play. And I took a step forward, not because I wanted to, but because the floor made me. You know those dreams where you try to scream but nothing comes out? Where your feet sink into the ground, your body won't move, and even when you do scream, nobody hears? That's what this felt like. Except I wasn't dreaming. I was standing at the front of the chapel, facing rows of silent Roussel ancestors under flickering candlelight, while Sebastian, no longer the fragile, half-starved teenager from the tapes, stood beside me like a groom at the altar. The organ music swelled, droning, hypnotic. It wasn't playing notes, not exactly. It was playing names. I heard them, whispered into the melody. Dozens, hundreds, each one pressing into my ears like fingers. Victor, Émilie, Charles, Estelle. Sebastian turned and offered me something. A scroll. The same kind I'd seen in the painting, the ones held by each Roussel heir. The parchment looked ancient, but my name was freshly written on it. Elegant black ink across the bottom line. Open quote, Victor Roussel III, close quote. He said nothing, just stared, waiting. I shook my head. I'm not signing anything. One of the audience members let out a small gasp. A woman in Edwardian mourning dress. She looked hurt. Sebastian stepped closer, calm, gentle. "You already did," he said softly. "When you came back, when you stepped inside the house, it records your intent. That's all it needs." I backed away, but the chapel stretched with me. I swear, the space grew, ballooned, the walls breathing like lungs. "You never left the family, Victor," Sebastian continued. "You were misplaced, misnamed. The house always finds what it loses." "That's not my name," I snapped. But it didn't matter. The scroll began to glow faintly in his hands, the ink shimmering like oil on water. The portraits lining the chapel walls began to hum, low vibrations as though the paintings were speaking to each other. And then the floor shifted again. The pews slid aside as if on rails, revealing a symbol burned into the floor beneath, a massive Ouroboros, the serpent eating its tail. The same one on the crest. In the center was a space, circular, empty, waiting. Sebastian gestured to it. "Stand there." I didn't move. "Or what?" I asked, trying to sound defiant. That's when the pews began to empty. One by one, like the people in the audience stood and walked toward me, slow, synchronized, dreamlike. Some dragged their feet, some hovered slightly above the ground, but they all moved the same way, deliberately. There were too many. And behind them the candlelight turned crimson. Shadows thickened like syrup along the corners of the chapel. I had no choice. I stepped into the circle. The hum stopped. Silence. Then light. Blinding. Warm. Almost comforting. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I remembered. Flashes. Me, as a boy. Running down that gravel path, a woman calling after me in French, my hands in dirt, a marble ball in my pocket, music on an old gramophone, but it wasn't me, not the version of me from this life. A past life, a borrowed one. Whatever it was, the moment I stepped into that circle, I felt my spine pull. Not physically, but like something was unzipping the identity I'd always worn, pulling Victor out of me. Then the organ stopped. Sebastian raised the scroll and read aloud. "By name, by blood, by will, and by word, the House of Roussel recognizes its son." The audience repeated him, voices layered and echoing like an ocean wave. Open quote. "Its son." Close quote. "You are no longer Victor as was," he said, "but Victor as is. The house has claimed you. The blood remembers." And I swear to you, I felt it. Something waking in my bones, in my marrow. The language they spoke suddenly made sense. The whispers I'd heard in dreams became clear. I knew the names of people I'd never met. I understood every symbol, every stone, every crack in that cursed house. My own thoughts started to shift. Who was I? Who had I been before? I looked down and saw the Ouroboros glowing beneath my feet. A pulse, a beat, the house's heartbeat. And in that rhythm, a question throbbed. Open quote, "Stay or leave." Close quote. If I stayed, I'd never leave again. But if I left, what would happen to them? To the people trapped in those portraits? To the ones frozen in that hallway? I asked Sebastian. "Can they go free if I take my place?" He blinked, not with surprise, but approval. "They never left," he said. "They're echoes. If you take the name, the house can settle. The others can rest." My hands trembled. I was holding the scroll now. I didn't remember taking it, but it was warm in my grip. I had a pen. All I had to do was sign. That was the deal. Give myself up, become Victor Roussel III. Let the house complete its story. Let the rest of the souls inside finally exhale. I looked up. Everyone was watching, waiting, not menacing, just tired. So tired. I took a deep breath and signed my name. The moment the pen left the parchment, the chapel exhaled, a low, soft sound like air releasing from a balloon. The candles turned white again. The portraits smiled, some even faded like dust on a forgotten mirror. And the audience, they bowed, all of them, to me. But before I could even react, everything went black. When I woke up, I was lying on the grand staircase. No candlelight, no whispering choir, no Sebastian. Just morning sunlight streaming through the shattered stained glass windows of the main hall. I could hear birds outside. Birds. Real ones. For a moment, I thought it had all been a dream. Some elaborate hallucination, like the fever dreams I had once when I caught the flu as a kid. But then I sat up and felt the scroll still clutched in my hand. Not a dream. The seal had changed. Where there had once been a blank crest, now there was the Roussel emblem, clear as day, embossed in wax. My name, etched in elegant ink, looked older now, like it had been there for 100 years. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked through the halls, half expecting the screaming portraits, the warped space, the echoing voice of Sebastian, but the place felt empty, not abandoned, just at peace. I passed by the sitting room. The velvet chairs had been dusted, the broken vase now whole again with fresh flowers, lilies, just like in the old photos. The piano, previously covered in cobwebs, now gleamed. Someone had been playing recently. I touched a key. It let out a perfect note. The hallway with the frozen guests? Gone, or rather, back to normal. Just an ordinary corridor with faded wallpaper and long carpets. No faces, no figures, no dragging footsteps. Whatever I had done, it worked. I stepped into the library, the same place where I first watched the tapes, only now the tapes were gone, replaced by hardcover books, thick tomes with gilded lettering. A long table sat at the center with a fresh envelope waiting on top. It had no name, just the Ouroboros symbol. I opened it. Inside, a deed. To the house, signed, dated, under the name Victor Roussel III. My name, apparently. There was a letter tucked behind it. In handwriting I didn't recognize, but somehow understood. Open quote, "It's always been you. There is no curse, only memory. The house was never haunted, only grieving. You made it home again. Thank you." Close quote. I didn't cry. I didn't feel fear. What I felt was finality. Something had closed. Something old. Heavy. And as strange as it sounds, I also felt rested, like I just finished a long, exhausting journey and finally reached the place I was supposed to be. Even if I hadn't known it until now. I stepped out into the garden. The air was sweet, crisp, clean. The vines that once choked the windows were blooming. No more clawing, no more bloodstains on the walls, no more pull of unseen hands dragging me backwards, just sunlight. I made my way to the graveyard. Yes, the Roussel family had a private cemetery on the estate, one I hadn't dared enter before. But now, the gate opened easily. I walked the rows of graves. There were hundreds. Generations of names I recognized from the portraits, the ones from the Whispering Chapel. And there, at the far end, stood a new headstone, freshly placed, polished marble. My name. Victor Roussel III, returned 2025. The house remembers. It didn't say died, just returned. I didn't know if it meant I'd vanished from the world or if I'd now lived two lives, two versions of myself split across time. But I no longer felt lost. I walked back inside. The house felt warm. I opened a small side door I hadn't noticed before. A hidden staircase led down, deep into the earth. And at the bottom, a study, lit only by oil lamps. Dozens of journals sat neatly arranged on the shelves, all written by previous heirs, generations of them. I picked one up, Victor Roussel Ons. The penmanship was sharp, regal. Inside were accounts of lands bought, treaties signed, dreams dreamed. The next book, Sebastian Roussel. My cousin? Brother? His writing was messier, but familiar. Open quote, tried again today, found another descendant. Didn't work, still not him, still not Victor. The house is impatient, I hear it in the pipes. I read through pages of his efforts, tracking down family members, trying to bring them to the house to awaken the rightful heir. The heir had to return willingly, had to fit the house like a key in a lock, and me? I'd walked right in, touched the marble, sat in the heir's chair, chosen the house. I closed the book, heart pounding. I looked around and realized there was another chair across the room, occupied by Sebastian. Only this time he was very still, eyes closed, a faint smile on his face, at peace. He was gone. Whatever had tethered him here was now finished. He'd completed his task. I had taken my place. The house didn't need him anymore. I knelt beside him, placed a hand on his cold shoulder, and whispered, "Thank you." Outside, a soft wind stirred the trees. Bird song echoed. The old clock struck noon, and for the first time in centuries, the house made no protest, no shift, no breath, no hunger, just silence, content. I stood up and began to write. The house remembers, but people forget. I needed to leave something behind, a record, for the next Roussel if they ever came. But more than that, for you, for anyone who's ever found themselves drawn to a place they can't explain, a pull that doesn't let go. a name that doesn't belong but fits anyway. If that's you, check the portraits, the nameplates. You may be part of something older than you know, or you may be the next in line. Either way, the house will know. And when it's ready, it'll call you home. I spent the following days exploring every inch of the house. This time it didn't fight back. The strange passageways remained solid and predictable. The ceilings stayed the same height. My reflection in the mirrors didn't wink at me anymore. It was a house again. A real house, but one saturated with memory. Sebastian was buried on the hill behind the mausoleum. I did it myself. The ground gave way easily, as if it had waited for him. No ceremony, no audience, just the whisper of wind through ancient trees and a single candle that refused to blow out no matter how hard the breeze. I placed his violin beside him. It was only right. Then I locked the mausoleum and turned the iron key over in my hand, half expecting it to dissolve, to disappear as all strange things did in this place. It didn't. It just got colder. The town nearby remembered the Roussel estate, but as a ruined place. They called it cursed, even now, a relic of old power and lost people. No one dared come up here, which suited me fine. I needed time. The story of the Roussel wasn't over. It just changed hands. Inside the attic, I found a row of old documents tied with twine, letters from magistrates, reports from doctors, deeds signed by people long since turned to dust. The more I read, the more I realized something chilling. Every few generations, the family tried to re-enter the world. They'd rebuild the estate, send out invitations, host lavish gatherings, only for one member, usually the most ambitious, the brightest, the favorite, to vanish without explanation. The others would leave, the house would close again. Wait, and then, years later, another name would show up, another victor, another iteration of the heir. I had broken that pattern. But the house hadn't forgotten it. It wanted new life. It wanted to matter again. And somewhere inside me, so did I. I updated the foundation's records, opened a few bank accounts under the old family name. Money still lingered in ancient vaults. I started writing articles anonymously about lost European families. Then came the letters. People wrote in, claimed their great-grandfather knew a Roussel. One woman said she remembered a man with Sebastian's face visiting her grandmother in 1973. Another said her father went missing after attending a dinner at a chateau in the French countryside. Some of them were fake, but others had photos, old ones. And sometimes, just sometimes, I recognized faces. There were more Roussels out there, more bloodlines, more secrets. The scroll's seal stayed on my desk, next to the candle that had never gone out. I never touched it again. But sometimes when I passed it, I could swear it was warmer than before. One night, weeks later, I dreamed I was back in the Whispering Chapel. But it was silent now, empty, except for one chair. Mine, the one in the center. Lit by sunlight, no shadows, no voices, just waiting. When I woke up, I knew what I had to do. I sent out invitations, 100. All handwritten to people who just might, be part of the bloodline or part of the house's memory. I don't know who will come. Maybe no one. Maybe only one. But the house is ready, and I think so am I. There's a tradition that each heir writes the final page in the journal. I found the last line Sebastian ever wrote. He finally came home. And now it's my turn, so here it is. The house remembers, and now so do I, close quote. So if you're still here, still awake somehow, congratulations. You've made it to the end. You've walked with me through cobwebbed corridors, flickering candlelight, and the endless echoes of a name long forgotten by the world, but never by the walls that held it. You've heard the whispers of the Roussel family, seen what happens when legacy and memory entangle across centuries. You know now that not all disappearances end in tragedy. Some end in return. The house is no longer haunted because it was never angry. It was lonely. And sometimes what looks like a curse is really just a story that hasn't found its ending yet. So wherever you are, I hope you feel a little more grounded tonight. A little more connected to the strange paths history sometimes weaves beneath our feet. The night is calm now. The candle's almost out. And though you've heard the last of this tale, The house will always be there, waiting. But don't worry, it doesn't want you. Not unless your name is on the scroll, not unless the key fits. So take a deep breath, let your mind float. There's no need to worry about forgotten doors or ancestral curses tonight, because tonight, you're safe, right here, with the lights off, the fan humming softly, and you're breathing slow and steady. Sleep well, traveler. And if you dream of marble halls and flickering chandeliers, don't be afraid. It's just the house saying goodnight.